What's going on, everyone? So this James Harden mess just continues to be an absolute mess, and it's just like no traction. Nothing seems to be heading in a direction for change. By all intents and purposes, it looks like James Harden is probably going to start the season with Philadelphia, which I think is a terrible idea, but we'll get into that here shortly. But got new information, new reports out today. Ramona Shelburne put together a nice little article. A lot of it was stuff that we already know about, but then there was some new information, some new details, specifically about like the All-Star game and how he was pouting and ignoring Adam Silver and stuff because he was upset. And James Harden responded to that it was lies, is how he put it. And regardless, it's just whether it's true or not. The fact that sounds like something that James Harden would actually do tells you a lot about James Harden and the perception of him and how it's changed over the years, right? This is a guy that went from top 5 guy in the league, winning MVPs, putting up historic numbers, just everything, right? Looking like an absolute monster out there. Now there's talks about him. Is he the greatest offensive player ever? Those were real debates and real conversations that you could have about James Harden. There was the questions of can he show up in the playoffs, right? He does a lot of disappearing acts then and there. And, is James Harden going to end up being the greatest player ever to never win a title and all that conversation? But he still had this perception of in the right situation, him on the right team, you're winning an NBA championship, or at least every year you're going to have a shot to win an NBA championship, right? And look, if it wasn't for the Kevin Durant Warriors, James Harden might already have an NBA championship, right? Those Houston teams were the only teams that ever even stood a shot against them. And so, I do think a lot of the miscues in the playoffs are warranted, absolutely. Right, he's just completely disappeared in big games, big moments. But I also think a lot of it was just circumstances too. Right, both can be true. Right, like James Harden could have already won a championship or two if it wasn't for that Warriors team that nobody could beat. Right, it took literally the entire team falling apart for Toronto to beat them. Otherwise, Toronto wasn't beating them either. So I don't put too much into that, but at the same time, it is an issue that has plagued James Harden over the years that is warranted, right? But now you have that. You have him not being the same player that he once was. And you have now this perception and stigma around him that he has developed himself because of what he did to Houston, because of what he did to the Brooklyn Nets, and now he's doing the same thing to Philadelphia. And it's like, at what point do teams just say, all right, we're done? Look, he gambled that the Houston Rockets, who loved him, and he was the guy, and he was king, and all of that they were going to take him back open arms, and they, instead of going and bringing James Harden back, would rather overpay for Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet then bring James Harden back to Houston. And I don't blame him. You have a young roster, a young core. Why would you want to bring that headache here? A guy that is sitting here taking trips and flying in between playoff games to Vegas and gambling and partying and living his best life instead of focusing on winning an NBA championship. Maybe he wouldn't have the issues that he has in the playoffs if he actually took the playoffs seriously. Right? And now you have this picture that is painted, and we have seen very talented guys fall out of the league because they just have that. Allen Iverson is a great example. Allen Iverson probably could have played another 5 years if he just did what was asked of him, was willing to accept what roles were being offered to him, but instead he thought he was still Allen Iverson of Philly, and he was the guy, and became a locker room problem and had all these issues, and teams just said, we're good, we don't need him. And you're starting to see that with James Harden. This whole disaster to me just seems like James Harden crying and a relationship that has spoiled, right? A relationship that has gone wrong, right? The whole reason James Harden is upset is because Philadelphia ghosted him, as it was put. Philadelphia ghosted him because, or leading into the free agency. And that Philadelphia was surprised that James Harden opted in. Which, if that's true, that tells me that they didn't even want James Harden to opt in. They were hoping James Harden went to Houston. Which makes sense, because if they would have lost James Harden, they would have had a lot of cap space. And next year, they're going to have a ton of cap space. Right? So, if those reports are true, and it's not just some hearsay or some made-up story or whatever, which I hope, there's a little more integrity to that article than that. But if that's true, one, James Harden is crying just to cry. Like, dude, what did you want them to say to you? What did you want to happen? Philly just got in trouble for doing the very same thing the year earlier. We talked about this. Why would Philly want to risk it again? Daryl Morey probably looked at it as, I have a relationship with James Harden. As soon as I am eligible and allowed to talk to him, I'm going to talk to him. He was probably banking on the relationship. James Harden feels slighted. For what? What? Like, because he didn't call you a week before free agency? And yes, look, usually when teams are talking to their own free agents, that's kind of, the league and everyone kind of looks the other way because it's your free agent. You're not trying to, convince or entice some other free agent on some other team to come. It's your free agent, so you can keep him. But still, why would Philly want to take any chances, any risks, when they just got in trouble for this very thing? Why would they want to take that chance? It doesn't make any sense why that would happen. And yet, here we are, and James Harden is pouting and crying and throwing a big old tantrum. For what? For what? What is the problem? You're still on Philly with Joel Embiid, who is arguably, he played with Kevin Durant, but outside of Kevin Durant, the best player he's ever played with. Right? Like, the guy has everything that you could want. He's on a team that could easily win an NBA championship. If he didn't choke and disappear, they might have this year. But it's it. Like, at what point do you take accountability? It's like every place you've gone, it's been somebody else's fault. Houston, they're trying to rebuild, they're trying to tank, I don't want to be a part of that. And he just self-imploded that team. So much so they thought he was wearing a fat suit to training camp. You had, Kevin McHale talked about how, like, James Harden purposely showed up to camp out of shape and overweight to get him fired. Like, this is a pattern. This is who he is. He goes to the Nets, which is where he wanted to go. They put together a super team, and he didn't like Kyrie, and he didn't like the way the organization just lets Kyrie do whatever he wants. So now we're at two places, and it's the organization's fault, and it's not your fault. Right? And then you get to Philly. You have your guy, Daryl Morey. You have another superstar, top 5, 10 player in the league in Joel Embiid. You have everything, all the tools, everything you need, and now it's the organization's fault again. How many, so what, he's going to go through every team in the league, and it's going to be the organization's problem and not his? At what point do you just say I'm the problem? Take a page out of Taylor Swift, right? Like, it's getting ridiculous. And then there are even reports that he wants to be like the guy again, and he wants to be, you're not that guy. You haven't won or done anything. What have you done? Except for be a second round exit every year and not show up. Like, again, it's ridiculous. Luckily for Philly, Joel Embiid seems willing to kind of ride this out. Right? We even got reports today that Joel Embiid is going to wait out this hurricane, this drama. But, like, at what point does Joel Embiid just say, all right, enough is enough, right? You're lucky Joel Embiid is willing to stay patient, remain patient. Because this is now twice in the last, 2 years that this same scenario has happened. So, it's a mess all around. It's a disaster all around. The last thing Philly needs is for Joel Embiid to say, all right, I'm done, get me out of here. And look, Here's the thing. The only reason Joel Embiid might be just saying, okay, I'm willing to ride it out, is because he might not have a choice. Right? It's not like if he was a free agent next year or he was ready to go sign an extension, do you think that he would be, oh yeah, let's go do that. Let's go sign it up. Right? Let's go put it together, right? No. I guarantee you this conversation about Joel Embiid and his patience with the Philadelphia 76ers would be completely different right now if he was eligible for free agency anytime soon. Problem is, he has like 3 more years minimum on his deal. He has this year, then he has 2 more years, and then in 2026, 2027, he has a player option. So the earliest he could get out is 2026, 2027. Do you really believe if he could go and exercise his player option next year and opt out, you think this conversation would be the same? Absolutely not. It's just Joel Embiid's probably like, why am I going to rock the boat and request a trade when Daryl Morey's probably not going to trade me, because Daryl Morey just has that, that reputation. If I'm Philly, I'm getting rid of James Harden. Like, why? Like, Daryl Morey is trying to play hardball and show who has the bigger one. For what? For what? James Harden's going to leave next year anyway. If you could get anything for him, you might as well get something. Let the ego go. Put your ego aside. Put it back in your pants. Tell yourself, all right, it's not worth it. Go get some players that actually want to play. Even if you're trading him to the Clippers for like Covington and whomever, right? You're just getting a bunch of expiring contracts, right? Go get Nicholas Batum and Robert Covington, right? For James Harden, whatever. Yeah, that's not ideal. That's not the best return, but who cares? At least you got 2 perimeter guys, 2 3-and-D wings that are willing and wanting to play. At least you got some guys that want to play. They're expiring contracts. So you don't mess up your flexibility next year when basically the only players on your roster are Maxey and Joel Embiid. Let this year be Maxey's breakout year. Put a bunch of defensive 3-and-D guys around him. They went and just got Danny Green and stuff like that, right? Like, just go that route. Let Maxey be the primary guy, the primary ball handler. Him and Joel Embiid can be the 1A, the A and B option, right? And just keep a nice core of guys that want to play, because at least you can sell Joel Embiid on like, hey, at least these guys want to play. I know it sucks. I know it's not ideal. At least these guys want to play. Next year, it's you and Maxey, and we have like $80 million in cap space. We can go get another star and then some, or we could just get a bunch of like blue chip guys and build a real contender. If I'm the Sixers, that's what I would do. Because you're just going to keep, next thing you know, James Harden's not going to report to camp, or he's going to report and he's going to be out of shape and out of weight and just doesn't care and is just sabotaging. We've seen him do it. He did it to Houston. Right? Like, so what? You don't think he's not going to do it to you? Of course he will. So, I don't know. If I'm Philly, I'm shipping this guy out immediately for whatever you can get. Obviously, again, you don't want long-term salary. But if you can get anything that is some expiring contracts and some guys that actually want to play the game of basketball, do it. But anyway, again, as always, this is a discussion. Pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts, opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? What do you think Philly should do? What position do you think Philly's in? Love to hear it. Let me know.